Charles Bediako isn't coming back, man. Reports have him staying in the draft. 31-6 last year. The 7-foot sophomore played how big of a role, in your opinion, in that 31-6 SEC regular season, SEC tournament, and #1 overall seed? Huge part, big part, average contributor. Where do you put? Give me a phrase that describes how important Bediako was to that team last year.
Well, I mean, you think about Alabama's defense. You know, everybody talked about the offense. Defense really good, and Bediako was one of those guys. I don't want to necessarily call him a rim protector. He is a straight-up 7-footer, but he's an athletic guy. I thought I saw massive improvement. The numbers weren't much different from year 1 to year 2. It just looked like he was more comfortable. And I am shocked he is not coming back, because at best, Bediako will be a G leaguer for the next 2 or 3 years. Maybe he'll have some kind of massive.
You can't find a place on a roster for a 7-footer to, you know, let's say he's in Denver and Jokic gets in foul trouble and has to come out for 3 minutes a game, or just to rest for 4 minutes a game. Is that not a guy you could put in to protect if you've got a big in the NBA? An Embiid or somebody like that to go in and just play a little D?
The problem is you want a guy that actually, and he can defend multiple positions, but, you know, he's not a guy that you would actually call a, I don't know. I just don't think he's going to be, at least right now in his career, a guy that is going to be able to defend some of the other bigs. And the bigger problem is the guy can't score. I mean, you're averaging less than 7 points a game for the #1 team when you've got other options out there. And look, and I know he probably, you know, I mean, he shot 66% from the field, so he was effective, but he's not going to be a scorer. I just thought his game needed more refining. And I think coming back would have been the best decision for Bediako.
Anytime I would go watch him, and his improvement from 2 years ago to last year was noticeable. I think Alabama fans would agree with that, right? I mean, tremendous improvement from 1 year to the next on how he ran the floor, his speed, his movement. But I never looked at Charles and said, that guy's fluid. Fluidity never came to mind for me. His movement around the floor seemed to was not effortless. It seemed he had to urge himself to move down the floor a little bit, as a lot of big men do.
But
I mean,
you know, there were points like, you know, I think the only Alabama game I went to was the Kentucky game, and Sheboy, Bediako pretty much shut him down.
Owned him in that game, so, absolutely.
You know, there are moments, and that's the thing, and I don't know what advisors are telling Bediako. All it takes is one to say, hey, you're going to go in the second round. But to me, Bediako could have come back, could have made NIL money. I think it would have been big for Nate Oates to have that presence, because they don't have a lot in the front court right now. And I understand, obviously, Brandon Miller is going to be one of the top 3 picks in this draft. I understand, you know, Noah Clowney coming out. Clowney's probably going to be a late first-round guy. I know Sears and Quinterly are still playing with this. I think the best decision for those guys is to come back.
They're expected to come back, Mark Sears and Javon Quinterly. Bediako, according to reports, is staying. Obviously, Brandon Miller's a lottery pick, and Clowney is a first-round draft pick, so those guys are staying. You lose Jaden Bradley, who is now at Arizona, and Amari Burnett, who's now at Michigan. So those are the ones that have left. But coming in, you've got Sam Walters, Chris Parker, who were both top 100 guys. And then you've got Aaron Estrada, who was, the Colonial Player of the Year, whatever he was.
Yeah, for Hofstra, yeah.
Yeah, so you have those guys coming in. But I think, and I saw someone in the chat room nailed this. It's Brody right there. He was a huge part of the defense. Pringle is the only true front court player left on Alabama. How much is Nick Pringle? Now, obviously, Nate Oates is going to, you know, I guess try to still address this in the portal. But Nick Pringle, who I think had moments last year, you guys would agree, Nick Pringle looked really good at times. He develops a much more important role for this team next year. His minutes have to go up.
Well, obviously. But Pringle, you know, as you said, he had moments. He still wasn't what Bediako was.
He wasn't. I mean, I thought he wasn't what Bediako was, but I thought he had some moments where he looked pretty good.
Yeah, but, you know, I don't know what is so the kid that is coming in from Cal State Fullerton, the right cell kid.
Yeah.
I don't even know what position he plays.
4?
Is he a 4?
I don't know. I was guessing.
I'll tell you right now. But obviously they need some size.
Yeah, and that's something Nate will still try to address in the portal. Jace writes in, if Robert Williams' lazy self can find a roster spot, then so can Bediako. But I agree with Lance. He's G League at best.
Yeah, but, Robert Williams at least was an offensive factor when he played collegiately for Tennessee.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see about Bediako. I'm pulling for the kid. I just think it would have been big for Alabama and big for Bediako to come back.
Smuff says Pringle's shorter, power forward instead of a center role, a true center like Bediako is. Brody helping us out, 6'3" guard is what writes from it. So he's not a 4, Jim. I was just guessing because you brought it into the conversation.
No, Estrada and Wrightsell both guards. So
so it's Sears and Quinterly.
Yeah, not going to be a big roster, it looks like.
Hey, run the floor, right? Shoot the threes. Bobby Janai Broom talking about it blows him away, these kids who leave college to end up in the G League. Sharif, J.T. Thor, Bediako. If Janai Broom leaves, etc., we'll get word on Broom. He was flirting on social media the other night about which decision to make. I felt him playing that way. I thought that was his way of sort of opening the door for him to come back to Auburn. We'll see what Janai Broom ends up doing there. That's a little NBA draft update before we actually get to the NBA that impacted Alabama here locally, could impact Auburn with Janai Broom. May 31st is the deadline to pull yourself out of the NBA draft. They allow you to go through the entire process and then at the 11th hour pull yourself out. And so that is something that is still ongoing in the basketball world.